So I'll just go ahead and get started right into the agenda. So first on the agenda are Title IX procedures and internal system update. So I just wanted to provide you a brief update of some things that I have been working on in regards to ensuring and shoring up our Title IX procedures and internal systems. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was on November 5th, 2019, the district implemented a new system called Say Something. And what that is an anonymous reporting link. What that allows is for individuals to make reports or to state something anonymously to the district, whether it's regarding Title IX or whether it's regarding any matter that pertains to them and their status as a student or parent or whatnot. So that's really imperative, particularly from a Title IX perspective, in that we're able to capture complaints because in Title IX instance, individuals aren't necessarily, there's reasons why individuals do not report right away or immediately. One of those is being that they want to be able to remain anonymous. So through this Say Something system, we are able to communicate with individuals and they can still remain anonymous, and it allows us to hear about what's going on, and in certain cases, we can respond appropriately if they're able to provide us or want to provide us information in regards to who they actually are. So that system is really important, and I'm happy that we've been able to get that in place as of November 5th, 2019.
Kristen, could you just tell folks what kind of reaction we've been getting on that system? What kind of calls?
Yeah, we've gotten really a lot of tips, actually. Mostly friends contacting the tips line, asking for help with their friends that maybe are communicating to them that they're going to commit suicide or are going to harm themselves. I would say that's the good majority. We had a web shot that went up on Snapchat, I guess, within the last week with a thread at one of the middle schools. We got a lot of tips on that. They really, every child sent the attachment saying that they saw this on Snapchat and just to notify us. And so, other than that, we've actually gotten some parent tips. We've had some parents that have put tips in, so it's not just students. And I think we're up to the Williston Snapchat threat was put us way above what we normally would have been, but if we didn't count that one, I think we're at about 35 tips in 2 weeks. And a lot of them are repeats or things that we've dealt with, but then for ones that we have not, we're able to intervene.
So is this system online? Is it a phone system, or is it all of the above?
So Say Something is actually a state rollout of a Sandy Hook Promise program that has been rolled out in other states, actually Pennsylvania, and then certain school systems in other states. And it can be done through an app, it's a website, or it's a call center. Anytime you do that, you're right in touch with a crisis counselor. So when you put your tip in, the first thing that happens is you get a response back, whether it's on the app or on the website from the tipster. And they've really been talking to the tipsters a lot. The tipsters are really good at asking additional questions and finding out if people are safe. So we've really had a good response to it.
Yeah, I think that is going to be really helpful in regards to us being able to help keep students safe and making sure that their educational opportunities remain intact. The next on my list in regards to procedures and internal system update is that I was able to meet with Lieutenant Smith on November 15th at Central Office. We were having that meeting to talk about homicide protocol and also talk about some Title IX procedures and policies, just making sure that we're all getting on the same page when it comes to SROs and making them aware of Title IX and what their obligations are and vice versa. So I think that we were able to have a pretty good conversation. And from that, we have talked about me presenting Title IX training to the SROs so that they are familiar with what our role is in regards to responding to Title IX incidents and making sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. So that's something that we'll be trying to have in place for December. So that's another system that I just want to let you all know about, that we've had conversations about that. Also, I've spoken with detectives at the sheriff's office and also spoke with individuals at the Carousel Center. And when it comes to Title IX incidents, we want to make sure that students are safe and that their educational opportunities aren't negatively impacted. At the same time, under Title IX, school systems have an obligation to investigate complaints when it comes to Title IX issues, sexual misconduct, gender discrimination. And also, we have state laws that talk about mandatory reporting with law enforcement and Department of Social Services. So in that, we have, at the very least, 3 different systems that can be working all at one time, but for all the same purpose of ensuring that children are safe in their homes and in the school system. So I think taking that mindset, we all have the same goal in mind, keeping students safe, keeping children safe. And so I was able to have a conversation with detectives at New Hanover, the sheriff's office, as well as a brief conversation with individuals from the Carousel Center. In that, I'm very excited about the possibility of us working together a little bit more closely in order to limit the amount of times children have to, or complainants have to share their stories when it comes to Title IX incidents. So that's something that we're looking at, and I will be able to provide further information in the future once we're able to solidify some things. So Amy Feith will be having a conversation right after this to follow up on some of those conversations that I had last week. So that's something else I wanted to talk about. So those 3 things in regards to procedures, internal systems, along with the policies and all those other things that we've already been working on, are some things that we've done since the last Title IX.
If we could just back up a little bit to your say something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about how that was rolled out and how it was presented to students and parents? Do we feel confident at this point that the majority or all, that everybody who needs to know about this knows about it and how to access it?
I think I feel confident in that individuals are aware of it based on the amount of complaints that we got so far, but I'll let Ms. Jackson speak about some of those more specific details.
So the way it was rolled out to parents was we did a phone call the Sunday night before we trained. We trained during a week. Schools had the whole week to train. And then on Monday, we sent out an email to all parents also. I think that was Monday or Tuesday, that also had the parent brochure attached. And then every middle and high school student in the county was trained in the last about 7 days. And we opted for the plug and play video, which was about a 35-minute video that talked about how to use the app and the website, but also what types of things people should report. So we've had good feedback from parents. I've had a couple of parents a little concerned about the fact that it does talk about harming self and those sorts of things. But I think that we all know if your child has a phone and they're in middle school, they're probably going to see these types of things on their phone, and they need to know how to react to it.
All right. So that's the conclusion for regarding procedures internal system updates. So next on the agenda is the Title IX survey. So I know last time we met, we talked about rolling out the survey and when that would be done. And at the board meeting, we talked about rolling out the survey and when that would be done. But I want to share an update regarding the survey and particular reason why. So when it comes to the Title IX survey, of course, the Title IX committee has been having discussions about the survey since the inception back in, I believe, March. And I know a lot of individuals are clamoring for that to go live and be made available. But at this point, we need to make sure that we roll that out in the proper way, which specifically means making sure that the entire committee here sees the questions first. And I've been able to work with Dr. White and Ms. Feith in regards to getting some of those questions together, and I really appreciate your help on that. So we're not done yet, but I want to make sure that we take it through those proper channels first, which would first be making sure the entire Title IX committee see those questions beforehand, and then after that, making sure that the board has had the opportunity to provide feedback on those questions as well. So we're not at the finish line yet, There's still a couple more tasks to be done when it comes to the survey, but I just want to provide that update really quickly about that.
Are we still looking at a sort of two-tier thing of a preliminary survey and a final survey at this point?
Yes, first just to capture individuals' knowledge of just do they even know how to report those type of incidents or incidents in general, and then a more in-depth survey at a future date. So yes.
Do you have the questions?
Do I have the questions with me?
Yeah, can we discuss them? Could we have a little bit of a discussion on those? How many people on the committee have seen them?
Probably need to send them out first, let folks take a look at them before, and then we can come back at our next meeting and have that discussion.
Yeah, I think it would be best if we allowed individuals to look at them, review them, instead of digest them first, instead of on the fly. But I'm open to having that conversation at the next meeting in December.
But
I think
I'll-
we should probably have the subcommittee should probably discuss them first and then take it to the whole committee. Because I don't know that has the subcommittee talked about the questions?
We did.
Not in the final version.
Okay.
How it was developed.
Yeah, so I think we should probably maybe have a subcommittee meeting, let them determine the questions, maybe the initial questions, and then go from there.
Can that happen before the next full committee meeting?
I can send those out to, and we're talking about the policy subcommittee, correct? Or are we talking
No,
about the
I'm talking
education?
the
Education
Whoever was it, I don't know if it wasn't education, it was resources. Would have been resources.
We can look at putting some time ahead of the next meeting for subcommittees.
Okay.
I just hate to see us getting into the new year before we're moving forward on this. And if we don't.
Well, I think it's gonna have to be because you
Well,
can't.
I'm just saying, if the subcommittee doesn't see it, and then it's gonna be the new year before the whole committee even sees it.
Right, so I will make sure that the subcommittee gets those questions ASAP, so that they can review them. Once that goes to that process, then we'll provide it, open up to the entire committee, and then the board, and that's forward. So next on the Title IX agenda was community Title IX education. So since I've been here, I think that one thing that we definitely need to do is explain to the general public what the role of Title IX is, how that operates between law enforcement and the school system, and how that impacts children in the system as well as employees. So specifically, I want to determine avenues on how New Hanover County Schools can best educate the public about what Title IX is and what resolutions can be expected, so individuals can be on the same page with the school system regarding what interim measures, safety plans we can provide, as well as what type of remedies long-term can be expected from Title IX complaints. And so I'm not sure if you're on the resources subcommittee, can you raise your hand? Okay, so this task is really for the resources subcommittee. Before our next Title IX committee meeting, I would really like for you all to ponder and think about the best way for us to get this message out to the general public about what Title IX is. You don't actually have to get the message out to them, but just brainstorming on some ideas on how we can best do this. I spoke with Dr. Markley. We talked about maybe me writing a blog, putting on the Title IX website some information, some FAQs, some reading, or like a reading room, essentially, to educate the public. I think that's really, really important that the public is aware of what to expect from a Title IX process in New Hanover County schools, just so they can better understand what we're doing and we can be more transparent and they can better understand what's going on. So resources group, committee, subcommittee, that's something that I'm tasking you all with doing, just brainstorming some ideas how we can best interact with the public to provide them information about Title IX.
Can I take us on a little bit of a tangent here? Because I think most of us here are aware of a case that came up that kind of blew up on social media in this past couple of weeks. And I've had teachers and parents approach me, asking me questions, and basically I have listened to what they had to say, said, you know, I have the information that was on social media and what I was able to read, and nothing, I don't know anything further than you do. And so we're going to talk about this. But, you know, I was very concerned with what I saw on social media with the form that came out, the child who had made the report, for whatever reason, was listed as the perpetrator. And I don't know how that came about, but the whole thing felt icky, for lack of better language. And I think we need to talk about how this is affecting these students. I mean, we have a child who felt that she was a victim, who, I don't know the details of what happened and why. You know, I'm going to just assume that it was properly investigated, but the communication that came back was upsetting to the child and upsetting to the parent, and I think that that's counter to our goals. And I think we need to figure out how to do this better, because we want all of these students to feel protected and feel heard and feel safe. So I know the no contact agreement was put in place. I think that was proper, but
I'm gonna tell you, we're not gonna have that conversation in this large group about a particular case.
I don't want to, let's take it to the,
Sure. I met with the family last Friday. I'm following up with them later this week. But this is not a place to really have an individual kind of conversation.
I don't want to talk about what happened in terms of this specific child, but how can this be handled better in a general sense? I agree with you. We don't want to drag out, and I'm not asking.
I don't know
for
that it
further
can be
details.
handled better. I mean, I honestly don't know that particular case, or I don't know that can be handled better.
I would interject in regards to one point. We have had internal discussions. I had discussions with Julie Askew about making sure we're having open lines of communication with parents regarding these incidents. I think that's really important. Julie thinks that's a conversation we had. Make sure we're keeping open lines of communication. Not to go into details of that one particular case, but I will share that when it comes to Title IX incidents, federal government does require us to provide a written notice of outcome. That is something that's going to be moving forward for Title IX cases. We have to provide them outcome letters in writing that talks about the resolution of a case, and it talks about whether we were able to substantiate or unsubstantiate the claim. And there are certain things that we consider at the same time, particular personnel and FERPA laws, when we're sharing that information. But I think that brings me to the point I just discussed, making sure we're educating the public about what actual expectations are from a Title IX perspective. We're concerned with safety of students, and we're concerned with the impact on their educational opportunities. From a Title IX perspective, there are other systems out there, law enforcement, they can do a little bit more than what we can. But I think that brings us back to the larger point. We need to make sure that we're educating the public for what their expectations are from a school system standpoint in Title IX.
So I get that, and again, I don't want to ask for any more information than the parents have made publicly available by putting it on social media, so that this is out there. And I wonder if there are little changes that we can make, like when we put those no contact agreements together, that we just say student 1 and student 2, instead of assigning that someone was the complainant, and or these kinds of things, where we can just be more gentle with this language to make these children feel heard and protected. Because I understand there are the requirements, and that's one part of it, but
I was going to say, I think this, and I've been asked by my coworkers to stop reading social media, but I think we had a lot of discussion around language, and I think there was actually more of like, we should be saying these language, and I think you were exactly right on kind of that point of just being really transparent on social media, and as you were saying that, I was already kind of making notes of that education piece on a lot of these parent groups, because that's where I saw it. But the reality is, for a lot of us that do this work, we know a lot more than we're ever going to be allowed to say, and realizing that parents are always going to have this space. But I think the more we educate that, the less likely it is to go as viral or get as ugly, because parents will all have more information. So they're not ones contributing to that viral kind of outrage. You know, because if they have that information, they're not going to be the one sharing it or saying, that's horrible, oh, this, you know, and I think that's you want to kind of jump in there, but you know that you don't have all of the information or all of those pictures. So I know what you're saying, but I think that's where that piece comes, because I don't think you can change that. It's just really that education piece. I think that's what we've been talking about from day one in our committee, is getting this information to people so they know what to expect or what should happen is so crucial. Because I don't think you should be, because you're gonna have student 1, 2, if there's 5 students, you're gonna get lost in what that is. And there is a complainant, and there is that other piece of it. And I think it is, yeah. Yeah, and so it's,
And what they do.
and what they do that you can't control.
When you're having a decision, somebody's not gonna like it.
Correct.
Odds are they're not gonna like that decision. And unfortunately, in the modern world, if I don't like the decision, my first reaction oftentimes is, let's go to social media, because that's the norm.
Yeah.
We're gonna always do what we think is in the best interest of the students and working with the parent. If we make mistakes,
Bless you.
we'll talk to that parent about the mistakes we made. We're not going to talk to social media. Because just like Andrea said, not everyone on social media knows the entire backstory, and will never, you can never win social media. And
No.
to be honest, we're not gonna try to win social media. We're gonna try to do what's in the best interest of kids and parents.
But like you said, if you have that information out on those avenues of what that process looks like, at least people will be informed of what that process looks like. And I think the more people that know that, we can all have that reference point, because again, I think we're gonna be fighting a losing battle. And we teach kids media literacy. I don't think it wouldn't hurt for some of our parents to learn that, because I teach high schoolers, I'll be there Friday talking about what you put on the internet is staying there and has implications for you, your family, you know, and so. Yes, exactly.
I think that, and I'm going to speak as a little bit of an outsider since I haven't lived in New Hanover County that long, but I too saw this and I was shocked, and I'm on this committee and I know where everybody's heart is. And so it was very shocking, and talking to other people, I think maybe the school board, if I can say this, you all have a PR problem, because I think that my sense is that historically there's not a great reputation and there's not a lot of confidence that the right thing is going to be done. And so I think this is just another example that sort of says in general, I really need to work to instill in the community real confidence that even when they see something like this, the first response is going to be, oh, we don't know the whole story, because they do the right thing and their commitment is correct. So it's just sort of, if I can be blunt and say, I think that there's a general PR issue that really needs to be worked on in general to help mitigate these kinds of weird, you know, out of context things that pop up on
I
social
agree.
media, you know?
I agree.
Okay.
I thank you for pointing that out. I think that's absolutely valid. I think, you know, we have struggled to figure out how best to communicate with the public.
And all I could say to friends of mine who brought this up is that I'm on that committee, and believe me, they want to do it right. I don't know the whole story, but there's more to it than what we're seeing.
Well, I would say there's a segment that doesn't want to give the school board a chance to do it right. Jarrell's been here 2 months.
Yeah.
Came here from the outside, and I've seen him attacked for doing the right thing. So there's a group out there that no matter what the school board does, old or new, there doesn't seem to be a willingness to say, okay, there's a new school board, they're doing new things, let's see if they get it right. I mean, like I said, Jarrell, you've been here less than 2 months, and already I've seen folks attack him for doing his job.
Right. And I would just say, one of the things that I do admire is the committee is set up. We have a Title IX coordinator. We have a Title IX coordinator in position who is already doing investigations and sending out written letters of response, which, as I understand it, is not necessarily been in a timely fashion in previous, because we didn't have the resources, or sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until there's a problem, until there's an emergency. So I do appreciate that you are doing that piece. Two things that I always have concerns about, and you cannot control the social media, so when I get contacted, as we frequently do, and if you were in any of those threads, like 10 people tagged me and tagged the Carousel Center into the conversation, I would just say there are a couple things. One, sometimes in my advocate brain of 30 years, how you say what you say can often make all the difference in the world. And so I know that when you are coming from the perspective of an administrator or coming from the perspective of even a lawyer, there are certain ways you're used to saying things that when it's said in a different context or to a different target audience is going to be perceived in a very, I just had this conversation with another, not New Hanover County, but another county's sheriff's office this morning about like, well, so how you said it was not how it was received or intended. And so it may be that it's just language, not telling them anything different. I'm not saying don't tell them bluntly and being very honest about and transparent about the language, but sometimes how we say it can be how is not how it's received. But then the other thing, and I'm saying this more for the benefit of those that are maybe tuned in and watching this particular program, is that again, the stories that we're talking about as adults in this community are not our stories. If we are victimized, if the children are victimized, every time somebody with best of intentions is going on social media and posting about a child's experience, you are yet again taking control away from a child that experienced something that is not within their power to control. And so I would just implore the community again, with the best of intentions as adults, are we not being part of the problem when we are perpetuating that story, being fodder for the grist mill of our community? And that is not our story as the adults. It is still a child's story of victimization that they should retain the right to talk about or not talk about as they see fit. And I will just leave it there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And when I'm investigating or responding to certain cases, I'll run into parents that allow, as I'm working towards putting together interim measures or safety plans, and they'll allow their child, that's the complainant, to say what they need or what they want and rely on what their opinion is on what they think is best for their own education. I always commend those parents to let them know that that's really good, because it's allowing the complainant to have the power. And when it comes to these incidents, and that's very imperative when it comes to sexual misconduct survivors. So yes, just want to add that. So ultimately, I am open to discussions of how we move forward, because we're going to provide these outcome letters. I'm open to conversations about how we can best provide that information to the families that are involved, while also being empathetic as well. I'm not sure if anyone's seen incidents about me, but I've gotten it from both ends. Too empathetic, and not enough. So, yes.
You're breaking new ground here. John was, of course. Dr. Wem was at a state conference for human resources folks. And what was the message from one of your presentations?
Well, I mean, Allison was developing this plan and taking the steps to follow through on it. And many of the other counties that we're sitting next to, they had no idea. They're still working on Title IX as being the athletic funding for female students. And when they started going down the list of what you need to do under Title IX and under recommendations from the federal government, I mean, it was deer in headlights. It was, what do you mean? And there was a recommendation from the state for you to change a position, get the money, and get a director of Title IX tomorrow when you get back to the office. And I have never heard this person be that direct in how you handle where we were. And so we're still taking steps, but we're ahead of a lot of folks.
Right. This is definitely going to be a learning process as we figure out how we move Title IX from higher education into K-12 and how it works particularly for this district. So I am not above criticism. but we all do have the same goal. I'm sorry, I don't know whose hand was first.
I'm down, I'm done.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought.
I just had a thought. The policy committee has pretty much finished its work. And I thought, based on some of the discussion today, it might be a good idea to look at a communication committee. Because all of this groundbreaking work that we are doing here isn't going to make any difference if the people who we serve don't understand all the progress that we have made. Because this is a story to celebrate. That we have actually, and not just statewide, really nationally, K through 12. And Mr. Lewis and I were talking in this interview, he talked about professional development. I said, you're really going to be at the forefront of every professional development conference you go to, because people don't do this. And I feel like it's time to tell that story. That's such an, and it's not bragging and it's not spiking the football. It's people, there's a perception that we're the Catholic Church. Sorry, Catholic. But I think you understand the reference. And I think it's a problem that a committee needs to look at. How do we better communicate with the public? And I think your education piece is going to be a big part of that. And I think we need to look at ways where we can better tell our story. This particular story, not the board as a whole, but this particular story.
And I would also say that as far as education, Mr. Lewis, your primary education is going to be exactly what you just heard. Title IX is not just X. FERPA, a lot of people are not aware of what are the restrictions under FERPA. A lot of people are not aware of when there is a criminal investigation happening, what latitude do you have of details that you can and cannot share. And then the broader picture is, again, what I've always said is that schools have that special place where they're having to keep everything here on a balance until there is something that tips that balance for the respondent complainant. And if there is nothing that can tip it, then they stay here at the same balance. And I would still argue that no matter what we talk about, if you've got a complainant and a respondent, the best place for both of those children is in a quality education plan that allows for them to continue getting quality education. I'm not saying not refer for services for mental health assessment, et cetera. We all can use that, frankly. Every person existing can use that. But I'm just saying that it is a very unique place where you live as the school, that you have your hands are tied at balance. And it really is difficult when your scales are not tipped either way.
Right, and that's why one of the most important pieces when it comes to these Title IX cases is making sure that we provide support. Whether we substantiate or we're not able to substantiate, we're still dealing with students that need to be educated or employees that need to go to work.
And that was kind of my point of saying student one and student two, when we have a case where we haven't had a tip. So we're dealing with two students who need support. And at this point, we haven't had something substantiated. Let's make sure both students feel supported, both students feel safe, both students are getting what they're needing, and that the language in our reports is not getting in the way of that because the students are not feeling hurt or they're feeling victimized or re-victimized.
And the other thing too, I was going to say too, on your list of education piece is what are you required to report out, and what is required in that written report through Title IX, because some of the language that Mr. Lewis may be tied to is coming directly from a federal mandate or federal language that I'm not aware of, or the general public may not be aware. There's certain things that have to be statements made in a written correspondence, and I don't. Again, you aren't going to win the battle of once that happens and you're fulfilled that duty, whether somebody takes that letter as it stands and then puts it out for public consumption.
But is there no recourse for doing that? I mean, and I apologize for my naivety in all this, but your correspondence with parents, is that information not protected? I mean, I realize that you are sending a response letter based on your investigation. But is it not appropriate in your education of the community to say that these matters are confidential, that they're not to be shared in the public spectrum? Now, whether parents actually do that or not, then we go into a civil legal aspect, but is that part of the education piece?
I am reluctant to tell individuals what they can and cannot say to other individuals from an institutional New Hanover County Schools perspective, so I don't ever specifically tell who you can or cannot share information with, because individuals still have First Amendment rights.
That's
But
what we can do, is simply say that we do not, or will not share anything.
right, so we operate on a need-to-know basis. When it comes to a outcome letter, that need-to-know basis is me, or person that's writing the letter, and the two individuals or the parents, however many parties we have that are going to receive that. So that's at the strictest level of need-to-know when it comes to those outcome letters. So that's not something that I send those out, I put those in the file that stays safe and locked in my office.
There again, we cannot control what the parents do once they receive that, but we certainly control what we do.
Correct. So I encourage individuals, when I'm conducting an investigation, speaking with parents, I encourage them to keep the information limited, simply for the respect of the sensitivity of the issue. But if they want to move forward and share that with other individuals, they can, as long as it's not crossing into the threshold of retaliation. So I always give them that spiel. You can talk about it until it becomes retaliation. So that's where we are when it comes to Title IX letters. But also, as we're talking about the education piece, so here are some ideas that I did have, and I'm just open to discussion later once the resources subcommittee, the resources subcommittee comes up with some ideas. Some things that I had thought about for education was, one, the blog, an open forum, and using the Title IX webpage as a vehicle for informing the public. I was thinking of having an FAQ, frequently asked questions, once a policy that we've been working on gets approved, to coincide with the approval of the policy FAQ that would go on the website, and we can really answer some questions that we frequently get, that I get from parents. So those are some things that I was thinking about from an education piece. But to wrap all of this conversation up, education of the public is imperative. And so speaking about yes?
How about Dr. Markley, the podcast, the monthly podcast? Do we have anything lined up after January? That might be.
It's probably a question for
Correct.
LaShawn, I think she's,
Ms. Clegg or LaShawn?
LaShawn Smith.
That's another opportunity on the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm open to all avenues, multiple avenues, whatever we can use. And so speaking about educating the public, that's why we have Ethics 360 on the agenda. So we'll educate the public about what we're doing to file reports and record keeping.
Yep.
So I'll turn it over to Ms. Jackson.
I wanted to give you a quick overview of Ethics 360, which is a consolidated reporting that we're going to be using as a platform. It's not just for Title IX, just so that you are aware of that. So any complaints that come into the school system, we're encouraging all bullying, harassment, discrimination, and Title IX complaints to come in, but also any other type of complaint that parents or community members or even staff might have.
Before we get into the actual mechanics of it, we have a lot of different ways to complain. Parent public concerns, employee complaints, there's the bullying process, and they all right now use different forms or platforms. Some are paper, some are electronic. So we were looking for a way to consolidate them into one place, and then to be able to do some data tracking with that. We also wanted a system that would protect anonymity, and so this is a site that was piloted, I believe, in Charlotte. We had a demonstration of, and really met the needs in terms of what we're doing. So this actually was in the works probably before even Title IX, but a way to consolidate all of those into one place and route them to the proper person.
So we're calling this the New Hanover County Concerning Resolution Center. So if you have any concern, I'm just going to skip through this to the staff PowerPoint, so it's not all going to be, not all referring to this, but this kind of shows the organizational chart of how all of them come into the district case managers, and then as a triage people, we send them out to the so we get a technology complaint that we give to Dawn. And so Dr. Wellness gets all the HR. Okay, so this just kind of tells you what they'll be doing and the roles and responsibilities, which is just basically who can see the cases and who can investigate them. But it looks just like this. So let's see if we can find a different timeline. if you see it. Crystal, do you
Oh,
know?
I don't.
I think it's going to be open. So basically what happens is it takes you onto a website that asks you what your concern is, and I'm going to take you through the questions just so you understand them. But we're not, it's not pretty on there. Okay, here we go. That looks a lot better, thanks, Dawn. Okay, so as you can see, it just says thanks for reaching out. You can put in any type of concern that you have with the school system. And so to report a concern, you click here. And the one thing that we really wanted to emphasize to people that this is not for emergency situations. So if this is an emergency situation, this is not the place to report it. This is for concerns that we're going to take time and investigate and resolve. Okay? So they have to say it. So as soon as you log in, the first thing it does is give you a case number, as you can see right here. So if you're someone who has a concern, it's going to give you this number, and a PIN, you get to put in your PIN number. Okay? And then it's going to ask you a series of questions. Real simple. What is your relationship to New Hanover County? Are you a parent, a concerned citizen, a staff, or a student? What location you have to apply a location, so a school or a building. And then this asks about the event. When did it occur? Has it been ongoing? How long has the incident been occurring? Okay. The next is, are you reporting about specific individuals? And if you say yes, it allows you to put the name in. And you can add any information that you have. Describe your concern and be as detailed as possible. Were there any witnesses or anyone else that would be willing to contact and speak to us? You can put their names in. Do you have some supporting documentation available that can assist in investigations? So lots of times, especially when we have bullying investigations, we have screenshots, especially if it's cyberbullying that the parents want to provide, so they can just put those right there. Have you reported it or tried to report this matter? If you have, how was it done? This conflict of interest survey is coming off. There's a few things that are still coming up that will come off of this. Okay? And then, do you have any concerns about being retaliated against about this report and why? And then, is there any additional information? And then it asks, do you want to give your name or not? Of course, if they give their name, it's a lot easier to work. And I think for common things like bullying reports and things, we're going to end up getting a lot of names. Then they submit it. One thing that you noticed on the front page, let me see if I can go back, was this check status button. So we can talk back and forth to the person who has the complaint, especially if it's anonymous. It doesn't give us their email address, but we can send messages to them. So if we want to ask more questions, we can do that, and then they can reply to us also. But one thing that they can also do is, to get to that, they need this, but they can also check the status. They can't really see details, but they can see if it's being investigated and when the investigation is finished. Of course, if it's a parent and it's a Title IX, we're going to be in a lot more communication with them than this, but this is just in general. Okay? One thing that we have that we've been working on, as you can see, and it's it's very wordy, but everybody wanted very detailed steps. So when we're doing a Title IX investigation in ethics, this is exactly what's going to need to be done. And it's nothing different than what we've been doing. It's just explained very specific. So, the first thing you do is notify DSS. You review the original report. You notify the parents of the complainant and the respondent. you were asking about interim safety plans. You do your interim safety plan if you need to. And then it also tells you where to put all of that stuff. So you interview the complainant, the witness, the respondent, and you put all of it in here. And then when you're finished, it goes to your supervisor, who then says okay or not okay, or we need more information, and makes a finding on that. And then it goes to Jarrell finally with all the documents that he's going to need. So we ask you them to put the outcome letters that they're sending to the parents in the supporting documents, so that when the principal at the school says, okay, this is ready to go to Mr. Lewis, then Mr. Lewis can look at it and say yay or nay, or let's make some different changes on the outcome letters, and then get those out to the parents. So we've worked pretty hard on this process, and it stores everything. So safety plans, outcome letters, everything is stored right here electronically, so that we have a good paper trail. And if we have questions about the case, it's easiest for us to find all the documents and things. Any questions about ethics?
Several.
Okay.
So you said that it is not for emergencies. Is there somewhere on here that gives someone instructions of what to do if it is?
Our webpage has to say something.
Okay, so that's there, but it's not on ethics, so
No.
you're gonna have to go back. Can it be on the page where it says this is not?
Ask them.
Because it
I
seemed,
don't think so, but I would think it says,
It says if you have an immediate threat, contact local authority.
yeah.
okay, because I think you want specific. Then, can you send out this document to us?
I will when we're done with it.
Okay.
We're not done with it yet. So what we've been doing is, so since we're still in training, and we train on the 2nd, like today Sherry Pinto and I had a training, and the more that we go into the program, the more we realize that we don't quite get every step yet. So we're running tests through it and through it and through it to make sure that complaints are handled and that we know the steps that need to be
You
taken.
saw the front page, which is pretty easy for the person filling it out. But behind that, there's a pretty extensive decision tree that goes into setting
There
it up.
is. Yes, it involves a lot of people.
Sure,
So they've got to do this for every type of complaint, not just for the Title IX.
sure. Well, the Title IX is what affects this committee, so when that one is,
We're
and
not quite done with it yet.
okay, so then my last question is, this is great for probably 98% of the people in the school system. But if you're somebody who does not have good internet access, or who is uncomfortable with technology, do we have a paper way for someone in that
You
position?
talk
to
to
do it?
us and we'll actually enter into the system.
Yes, so everybody at the school level who is a user on this account, they can create a case. So if I was a principal and a parent came into me and they said, I want to file this complaint, I would listen to them and say, great, but I want your words. Like me paraphrasing what a parent says is never good, because we don't hear everything, it's just the human condition. So sitting a parent at the computer to do that, but the most important thing with this is, it translates into 33 languages. So when we have a complaint, it really helps us with that language barrier that we have a lot of times with parents, and why parents don't feel comfortable when you're concerned to us, because we have so many languages spoke. So this will translate into 33 languages, so we will be able to get the parents.
And you can even ask the parents to handwrite it, and then you scan it as a document, and you can attach the document to the file.
Right.
And the processes that we have outside of this for those parents that would be more comfortable with the paper process, that we already have those. We're centralizing all of these responses, these concerns and responses in one database.
Right.
And so those that are in by paper, we already have those processes. We'll just transfer those.
Okay.
So anything that comes in, regardless if it's by phone, by paper, that we're gonna encourage the parents to do it on here, because I think that they will appreciate being able for us not to paraphrase. Then, there's a way for everybody to do it. It's not really, it's kind of a non-issue. And I think we're gonna get a lot of good response, and I think a lot of our non-English speaking parents are gonna find this very helpful, because lots of times when we take bullying reports, they come in and we get kind of understanding, and we go to find somebody who speaks that language, and then we can't find anything, and then we get the interpreter. And it turns into this very long, dragged-out process. This is really easy for them to just go ahead and report. We can sit them, we're encouraging all schools to have a computer in the front office, or if I was the principal, I'd be like, sit at my desk, I'll log you in, and here you go. So I think that this will work well for the parents. Any other questions? I lost the agenda.
Well, we're about at the end anyway, so that's a quick piece about what we're doing from an educational sense. Thank you all for being here. I'll let Dr. Markley come and have some final words about next steps and administrative
Just a
processes.
quick question, policy, we ready to take that to?
So at the last board meeting, I forgot what day it was, but I was there to speak with the policy subgroup. There was a lot on their plate, so we were not able to get to the Title IX policy because that is lengthy. So,
December policy.
right.
So we have policy that'll be there on the 9th, December policy meeting, which is typically before the board meeting. So then we've got our survey that we're going to send back to committee for review. So those are our two next steps. Crystal, what's our next month meeting date? All right, so tentatively December the 16th. I know we're heading into the Christmas season. So any issues with that date for folks? All right.
I'm sorry, I do have one question. Is there someone that's in charge of the resources subcommittee, or how does that work?
Amy.
Amy, okay. I'm already, okay, that works.
All right. We were talking, the suggestion was brought up that we have a communications committee. Is that something that we want to form before we adjourn today, or?
We got 3 subcommittees.
We have 2 now.
Well, we have 2, and policy is done. So,
And again, I feel like that's the most important step at this point, is explaining what we've done.
There are other policies done. I mean, we have other policies that kind of are maybe tangential, is that right? Or tangential to the main policy. So I think before we say that that one is finished and close the door, we should probably hold that. Now, education, we maybe could look at, education and communication to me kind of go hand in hand. So that may be somewhere that we could look to say, okay, could we do it there? But I think resources is talking about communication right now. So I don't want to overlap too much. So I guess maybe clarifying your thoughts around that communication piece. And if you want to send that out to the entire committee, and then let's see where it would fit.
We can put it on next month's agenda whenever our discussion. All right, Ms. Eastep, any closing remarks?
No, thank you all for being here. I do want to say we've got one, I think, who will be retired before our next meeting, and I want to say to her, thank you so much for all your hard work over the years.
Does anybody else have anything else? That is it. Now we're going to be giving you a
How does the state get the